It's like keeping yourself in business and never had a real job, basically. You better be a hustler.
So, over the weekend, guys, I had the privilege of talking with the creator of Sky Gods and Chaos Moon, Swiss comic book artist David Boller. Now, some of his credits, guys, include Spider Man, Batman, Justice League, Witchblade, and the list goes on. Okay. If you've been with the channel for a while, you know I have been following this project since February, since word first came out. If you're unfamiliar, this is the artist that broke in the news as being a former Marvel illustrator, creating his own NFTs on the Tezos blockchain. Well, guys, in this episode, we get to have a sit down discussion and talk to the man behind Sky Gods. That way, we can get a better understanding of the project, the mythology, the history behind it, and many more things. Because we talked a lot. We talked a lot in this discussion, guys. We talked about a whole lot of things. But more importantly, what I wanted to focus on is the Sky Gods Metaverse and the accompanying utility token. Okay, guys, that is going to be a very important piece. So make sure you stick around for that part. Also, he's going to go and expand the information that we have now, go over the transmedia concept a bit more. This was a very, very, very interesting conversation, guys. Had a lot of fun with it. I hope you guys enjoy it. And by the end of it, you'll know why I have been talking about it all year, why I am so excited about the potential of this, guys. Imagine being able to sit in the room before Pokemon was created, or before Digimon or Yu-Gi-Oh, or any of those popular franchises, Dragon Ball Z. Imagine being in the room when that was created and having the opportunity to get in on the ground level. Okay, that's what we're talking about here, guys. So if you want to know who this man is, if you want to know about Sky Gods, make sure you stick around to the end, guys. And of course, check the links down in the description. They'll have all his contacts there: Patreon, Twitter, the website, NFT platform, all the resources that you need. So that way, after you get the information and you're convinced, you can check the links down in the description and get directly involved. So with all that being said, guys, I'm going to get out of the way so we can get to the information. Big fan. I'm a really
Thank
big
you.
fan. So for me, I was going to come into this all formal and with a list of questions, but I was like, no, I'm getting a chance to talk to a creator that, like I was saying, your work has really had an impact on my life, and I didn't realize how much until I started looking at some of the titles that you
Right.
did art for. Like the 2099 series was one of those ones that I would pick up a lot. And now to be talking to you, it's an example of how the universe works. In my
That
opinion.
is true.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some, some information, some background about you. Some maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into comics, how you got into drawing.
Yeah, actually, the drawing thing is kind of like a weird one because I grew up in a time when having a television was sort of like not very educational. It was actually, people kept saying you watch too much television, you're going to be stupid. So my parents, of course, the good educational parents that they were, my father was studying psychology at the time. My mother was a piano teacher. They're like, we ain't going to have a television. You're going to be reading books. Which of course there's nothing wrong with that, but I had a lot of free time on my hand and I really loved comics, and they bought me a ton of comics. And back at the time it was such that you could go to a newsstand here, and maybe I should clarify, I'm talking about Switzerland here. So Europe, Germany had a really big comic book type of thing at the time. You could go to the newsstand, you have like a selection of like about 150 titles. I mean, not kidding you. We had all the American stuff, all the superhero stuff, of course, but then there was a lot of Western stuff, a lot of French stuff. It was all very, very inexpensive. So my father would just buy me like 10 magazines or like comic. They were like American style comic books at the time. And I would basically just start copying those and just drawing from those. I was very, very little at the time. We're talking, I couldn't even read the books, to be honest with you. And when I was about 7, I really got bitten by the bug. I designed my first 64-page comic book that I drew the whole thing, 64 pages as a 7-year-old. I mean, I just drew and drew and drew. And then when I was 14, I started like making photocopied magazines, which I sold to my school friends. I actually made my first money that way. And from then on, there was like no turning back.
So you were an artist and a hustler.
Yeah, I was always it's actually we could talk about that because I always keep telling if you really look, my career is next year is going to be 30 years, and it's like keeping yourself in business and never had a real job. Basically, you better be a hustler.
Got to.
Because there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. I mean, especially Chaos Moon is a particularly tragic story. We can maybe talk about that later, because that project goes back to mid 90, 95, 96, and 96, as some of you comic book fans may know, was the big comic book crash. I mean, literally, it's like a stock market crash of epic proportions, and comic book numbers have never recovered from there. And my book was actually number one. Chaos Moon #1 came out in the month that the second largest distributor filed bankruptcy, pretty much bankrupting everybody along the way. And so my numbers from back at the time were like, we have pre-sold 27,000. It went from 27,000 down to 7,000. And my publisher had such financial problems that they couldn't even pay me for that. Okay. So you what are you going to do in that situation? You hustle. And in my case, that was like finding somebody who's going to pay me a good price to sell the original art. And I actually found a collector in Italy who paid me more than I've made of all the Chaos Moon books, just of the original art. So that's what the hustle is all about.
I want to get into Sky Gods a little bit and get behind the concept, the thinking behind, putting this story together. Like, did this land on you one day when you were just in your creative zone, or is it something that you have been planning for a while?
I have to go really back also to my early childhood. I was actually asked in another podcast what my red pill moment was. And so if the situation is that I never had one. I was sort of born, basically the red pill came with the breast milk, so to speak. And I was born that way. It's even as a little kid, I was looking up at the sky, looking at UFO, trying to find UFOs, and for whatever reason, it never really occurred to me that this could not exist. So this whole thing of like aliens and this and that, it was always something that I felt very comfortable with until I got sort of into the paranoia phase, like the whole abduction nonsense, like in the early 90s and stuff like that, especially when I moved to New Jersey. And I was working with a company in Poughkeepsie, and that's on the Hudson Valley for those who don't know. And the Hudson Valley had this huge UFO flap in the late 80s, basically. This football field-sized triangular craft hovering over the highways, and that stuff kind of freaked me out. But I got over that. And the idea was always sort of like to sort of eventually do something like that, but I wasn't really exactly sure on what. Then a friend gave me it was about 30 years ago, a book called The Serious Mystery, which is sort of like a different take on the ancient astronaut theory. I always kind of like that idea of sort of like astronauts coming here and, helping.
John Vaniken's theory too. I do like that.
Yeah, okay. Not a big Van Daniken fan, but as a base idea, well, he's my fellow countryman, and unfortunately, he has a little too many right-wing tendencies for my taste. I'm not into kicking a silence out and stuff like that. But anyway, that's off topic. The point really is basically that I really always liked the idea. I was going to do something sooner or later. I knew that. Then when I started publishing my own graphic novels about 12 years ago, when I moved back to Switzerland, one of the projects was called The Watchers. That's what I called it at the time. Because there are several other things, similar kind of things with Watchers and this and that. They were coming back basically to Earth, and they're watching. So it was all kind of like, it's a little too pseudo-religious, and I don't really like the approach. So I put it aside. hoping for a better inspiration. Then all of a sudden, about 3 years ago, it just really hit me. Basically, I don't know. One morning I woke up, I was like, Sky Gods. I don't know where that came from. I was like, this is it. Why am I waiting for this, basically? And I really started working on it. And then I realized this is not just about ancient astronauts. This could be about the whole universe. Every time I see a science fiction movie, they never really offer a solution. It's always sort of like nebulous, and there's never really any real mythology. I'm like, what if I was going to make a transmedia project that involves comics, animation, and now, of course, blockchain games that literally tells the story from the universe, but I'm going to make a point about it. I'm going to tell people where I think we all come from. And I started posting on social media, and there's really a lot of people who started writing to me. I mean, that literally said, wow, nobody's ever really done anything. This looks really, I may not agree with you on everything, but I say, listen, this is fiction. I'm making this up. It's just an idea I have. And I've done some extensive research on it. It's not that I'm pulling this completely out of nowhere, but I've been researching UFOs and any paranormal phenomena for about 40 years now. I've owned every UFO magazine ever published. I've owned hundreds and hundreds of books. I've talked to hundreds of witnesses. So I'm fairly knowledgeable about it, So you see that in my posts when I talk about the mythology. These characters have names that people actually recognize. They say, oh, yes, this being with that name and that visual, that I recognize that. And that always really kind of amazed me.
That's what really pulled me in when I got exposed, because that was kind of in the EOS, if you will, all since we've made this transition to the age of Aquarius. Right. That type of knowledge, these types of ideas have been accelerated. And even in me, I have been looking more so to my, African spiritual roots and finding out that a lot of religions now, they're based off of that, and they're just different, offsuits.
Oh, but yeah.
That mythology of we all come from the stars, that's starting to pick up traction. And then
absolutely
earlier in the year, I think in June, you start seeing stuff on the news about alien abductions or alien invasion and all these things. So when I saw this product, when I saw Sky Gods, I was like, the timing for this is impeccable.
It is.
It will take time to manifest, but I think that definitely next year, there's going to be so many other things that happen that make Sky Gods, it kind of gives them an avenue to be seen. I agree. This morning, they're looking to create a REIT for the Metaverse starting next year. So that shows you right there that the Metaverse is going to be on everybody's mind. Fiction, these types of stories, it's going to be on the global conscious. So again, that's why I said the timing of this is almost perfect.
I think one of the gripes, of course, that will keep coming up is basically, why is this taking so long? And the reality is that I have to explain it.
That's why.
Well, that's the short answer. The long answer is basically that people live in the push button mentality world, where they think because they can click on Netflix and watch 10,000 movies, that everything is basically created that way. But on the other hand, of course, when I post stuff, and I have done that, maybe that was a mistake to some degree, that I've put like years on and say coming 2000 whatever, 2020, that is 2021, and now we know with some certainty that it's going to be 2022. But of course, people hold you to that to some extent, which they should. I don't blame them. But on the other hand, it is such a situation that I also realized, talking to a lot of people for possible investments, participation, stuff like that, there ain't nothing coming from the movie industry. This is a dead, barren field. There is no investment coming there. There is no interest. As a matter of fact, it's just any time I talk to somebody that's non-creative and has anything to do with money, their eyes glaze over. They don't get it. Who gets it is people like you, or like the fans, or like the people on social media that make comments that feel like this speaks to you. I even on my personal Instagram, I got a lot of comments from people that say, I don't really like this. This does not do anything for me. Why don't you go back to your old, more pragmatic things? And I'm like, yeah, well, then don't watch it. I mean, you can't make it right for everybody. But the problem is that the deal makers and the people who make the decisions, that's one of the reasons why we get so many terrible movies.
Yeah.
Basically, they would just like to do, as a matter of fact, they'll give you a little idea. When I was publishing comics, I was distributing also in the US, and that was going over the UK Diamond office. And the UK distributor basically told me, David, the problem is nothing wrong with your comics. It's just that the retailers would just like you to do Batman or Superman forever. They basically just want to sell Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. They don't want anything else. And nobody cares. Basically, it was my goal to create something that would be transmedia and could be built up in a way that it would actually give people like real, like mythology offers real solutions.
Shift it a little bit and talk about this metaverse. Okay, we're going to pull a little bit from the roadmap. I was very excited when I saw the roadmap. I'm a patient guy, so I'm okay with it. The more time you take, the more energy you're putting into it, the better the final result is going to be. So
I totally agree with you. As a matter of fact, I will go a step further. Just let me say this. If I would have been faster, I think I would have shot myself in the foot. I think the fact that this is coming, it's like a fine wine. It has to ripe to perfection. And this is sort of like the way things fell in place. If I would have been too hasty, or I would have been like, just rushing things a little bit more, it would not have been what it will be now. And I think what it will be now is what will make it a success.
Yeah. And I really I'm interested in this Lotus token.
Right.
Because that's going to play a large part in it too when it comes to garnering a community around this.
Absolutely.
Any details you want to give us about the token?
Well, generally, I mean, maybe I should just a little bit explain the whole background of it, basically. I mean, the idea really is again, I want to emphasize this. This is a transmedia project, and transmedia in that sense means that each media basically will cover certain aspects of the greater story. So the comic books, the graphic novels, there will be one on Ashtar, so we have that covered basically. There will be one, that explains the overall universe, just like a simple newbie guide basically to the esoteric universe. And then there will be anime series which will focus mainly in the beginning, the history of the world, but from perspective of aliens. So I think Earth is important in that sense because people have a connection to Earth, maybe more than something else. But the metaverse basically will be sort of the cornerstone that holds basically the glue that holds everything together. And the metaverse is particularly exciting, I think, because a lot of people don't want to be here anymore. They've told me over and over again, and says, what, I feel like I'm of Syrian descent or I'm of Orion descent or whatever. I'd much rather go home, So I'm basically going to be creating a virtual world where they can go and essentially create another life. It's like Second Life, just better, more interesting. And they can do that in various ways. They can basically get a prefab NFT type character that they identify with, or they can get a generative character that they basically create themselves. So it's all NFT based at the end of the day. And the idea is that they can basically get a plot of land on a planet and essentially start building their towns and their houses and their living quarters and everything like that. Also travel around. And to make this all possible, basically, is the Lotus token. Lotus is a very, very interesting because the Lotus is sort of like the flower of the universe. It sort of incorporates everything. And initially, I was going to make it crystal, but there's a lot of crystal tokens already. And I thought that was a little too obvious, and nobody has taken Lotus, so that's a good thing. Maybe I shouldn't speak about it too loudly because all of a sudden somebody's going to take it. But the idea really is essentially the end goal is, at least for the first phase, while we're still in a 2D, because it's going to be 2D in the beginning. We're not going to have 3D avatars walking around. That's going to be a real time type of thing. That's going to be the next step up, because that's going to be very, very difficult to do at this point. So this is going to be a sort of really simplistic, I mean, beautiful, but sort of simplistic 2D type of environment.
Yeah.
And the idea is that the token is going to be the economic backbone of everything that is happening. So people will get tokens through airdrops. Obviously you can trade them. There will be a DeFi, platform where you essentially also can stake your NFTs to get Lotus tokens, that you've purchased. So let's say, for example, you have your character, but for whatever reason in the packs, there are like 10 other characters in there you maybe don't like that much. You can use those and stake those and then get the tokens for which you can purchase item basically in the actual metaverse, or if you absolutely must cash out. And the funny thing is that I was just listening to a podcast yesterday. I totally agree with. I don't know how we've been following up on like these NFT games, the play to earn games, but one of the problems that's really crystallizing out is that, like, I give you an example, Crypto Blades, for example,
Okay.
that literally it shot up and it crashed literally within a couple of weeks. Crypto Blades, if you look at that radar, Crypto Blades only trades about $1,500 a day right now. They went down from almost $500,000. So it's like, why did that happen? Well, I'll tell you why it happened, because Crypto Blades may have been a decent idea, but the execution was so uninviting that you just get people click buttons and say, okay, fight, I win a fight, I lose a fight. It's not an immersive gaming experience.
Right.
And then people will not stay. They will take their tokens or cash out. And if everybody does that, basically, you'll basically deplete your liquidity pool in no time. And that's exactly what happened. And I don't want that. I want people to stay in the metaverse. So instead of cashing out, unless they absolutely really need to, I want them to basically reinvest into the community. And essentially, the end goal is by the end of next year, and you've seen that in a roadmap, is that each community should basically have their DAOs. So it's not that I'm going to be the overlord, but like all the Syrians, all the underwater Syrian beings, they will have their own DAOs basically, and they can invest their token into their own DAOs that they can make decisions with what they want to do,
Yeah, this it reminds me of another project called Sensorium, and it's a project that I talk about on the channel.
You're right. I saw that.
They're kind of focused on the far end future part of it. But I feel like that'll be one of the projects that once that goes mainstream, that will open people, it will desensitize them to being more immersed into metaverses, while this one is being developed alongside it. And then you have Decentraland as well developing metaverses. d.a.v.i.d's getting into the metaverse. So, and you know what? Speaking of d.a.v.i.d, their DigiCorp Labs, they're actually creating an enterprise solution for the metaverse.
I heard of that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So down the line, maybe, there may be some opportunity there that you can work with them to help, broaden the horizon a little bit. But I'm very excited about this metaverse concept because I can see it really playing next to Sensorium, where they focus on future far end tech. And then we have another metaverse for the people who want to, astral plane and history and mythology and stuff like that. I don't think that is going to go anywhere in people's minds. People are always going to be enthralled with history, where we
story. I'm telling you, it's very simple. Right. People are driven to story. Whoever offers you a great story, people will listen. The reason why Pokemon is the #1 franchise in the world, make no mistake, Pokemon is worth more than Disney, Warner Brothers, and all of those people together. It's the #1 franchise. And the reason why that is because they have comics, they have an anime show, they have a card game, they have an augmented reality game, and so on. They've diversified. It's transmedia.
Right.
And there is an overall story. And there's a story arc. Same as with Dragon Ball. Now, Dragon Ball didn't go to the extent that they have all that tech stuff, but that's why Dragon Ball still exists, because it has the cards, it has the anime, it has the manga, it has all those things. That's why I said for my metaverse, universe, whatever, it needs to be transmedia, because this is how you bring in new people. It's going to be somebody who sees a comic and says, wow, that's really interesting. What else is there? Because if you just rely on blockchain games right now, you're going to have a big problem. It's so hard to get into it for the mainstream person. It's just not friendly. It's not a friendly entry environment.
The user interface. Yeah, that's my thing with a lot of these games. It's with video games, what sparked the video game revolution in the early 2000s was the pick up and play games. When blockchain games get to that point, that's when it's really going to take off. So I agree with you on that. About there's a graphic novel you have coming pretty soon.
Yes, I mean, this has been forever in the works. There was basically three graphic novels, and I pushed one forward because here's the thing: graphic novels for me relatively quick to do compared to like animation or coding or stuff like that. I can literally, do that fast, and it will look good because I've done so much. That's was my bread and butter for almost 30 years. I know how to print them. I know how to present them. It's literally, this is like a machine that is very easy to roll on. And I wanted to have a graphic novel that will literally sort of explain to people what it will be like in the metaverse. It explains some of the characters, shows some of the races, the interaction between the races. Why are they the way they are? Why is that conflict? So basically, you read that graphic novel, it will be like an entry guide to everything. I could show that to somebody, says, read this. This will tell you everything you need to know in order to enter the game and watch the anime.
Yeah.
And then the second one, of course, is the Ashtar. Is just incredibly popular, and nobody's done anything with Ashtar in a long, long time. Ashtar goes back to the 60s. A lot of people don't know that. It's actually it's a character was created as a space brother by a guy named George Van Tassel. He was one of those contactees in the 50s, early 60s. It's all part of the metaverse. You can't see, this is the thing. You can't separate one from the other. DeFi, game, metaverse, land sales, NFTs, it's just one. That's the whole point, in my opinion, of crypto games, is that I watch a lot of game channels too, and I watch a lot of game developer, like the dev channels, basically, because obviously I'm writing my own games, so I want to hear what other people have to say, and you always pick something up. And on that one game channel of very senior game developers, they were talking about the blockchain, and they were laughing at it, basically. And they were like, well, why in the hell would I incorporate the blockchain in my games? That makes absolutely no sense. And I tell those people that have seniority over me, it makes all the sense in the world. Just from a financial perspective, NFTs are the game changer for the creative industry. If you don't get that now, that train will have left the station in a few months. I mean, you'll never get back on it. That's the thing. That's why I was so eager to get Chaos Moon released and Bunveil released, because it was material that I knew those were decent concepts, and I wanted to get in right then. It's like Ivan on Tech basically says, it doesn't matter what you do with blockchain right now, just do something.
Ask about Bunnyvale a little bit.
Bunveil.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. You would expect it to be Bunnyvale, but the city of Bunveil does actually exist. It's just not in California, it's in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple people that watch from New Jersey, so they'll catch on to that. But the artwork for that reminds me of Witchblade, which I learned that you did a little bit of work.
Yeah, not a little, 2 years worth of work.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's quite a lot. But what is that going into? Will that be a part of the metaverse as well?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, that's obviously a very different kind of animal. But here's the thing. Once you write a staking contract, which is a smart contract on Wax, which unfortunately it's not that easy, because that's one of the problems with Wax. There's very little information available. They have their Wax developer thing, but because Wax is not on the EVM machine, for those of you who are in a dev environment, you know what I'm talking about. It's not Polygon, it's not Binance, not Ethereum. So you're talking about a different programming language. You're talking a whole different procedure. And at the end of the day, when you make a blockchain game, the game itself is not going to be on a blockchain. It's just the assets you take for the game come from the blockchain, and the onboarding, like the user information metadata, comes from the blockchain, but the actual game is not from, obviously, would be possible for the blockchain to host a game as slow as it is, Right. So you have a variety of elements that need to play together, and there's a lot of people who are working on making this really easy for EVM machines. but not for wax. For whatever reason, nobody's developing anything on wax, and a lot of it, I have to be honest with you, at the end of the day, my wax things will have to go multi-chain sooner or later, otherwise I'm going to have some pretty big problems. So the idea essentially is with Chaos Moon and Bunveil is that once I have certain contracts written and they work and they're fine, I can use them. And I do have a website to go live on Bunveil very, very soon. And the idea is that you can stake the collectibles that you have bought. The appeal essentially like that it's like a reality NFT series. You have these 5 girls, they go to school, and every week you get 5 NFTs, one girl for one day of the week, and the weekend you get a girl on girl, quote unquote, although it's not really sexual, it's pinup. It's like you said, like it's on a level of Witchblade. There's no nudity, there's nothing really. It's good American.
I did pick up on the pinup aesthetic too. I was like, that's
yeah, it's good. It's basically really good classic American pinup. But the thing was that what I never liked about American pinup, that they're all white and blonde. And I felt that in our day and age, Asians are so popular,
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I prefer Asians over white Swiss women. It's like, so it's kind of like you needed to have your African American girl in, you needed to have your Latina in there, you need to have your Asian in there. I mean, people want that, and so the idea really of Bunveil is that there will be a staking thing where you can basically stake the collectible and to get the BVU token, which will go into the bigger universe then, and there will be a dating sim, and the dating sim, which is essentially, I'm using similar kind of technology I will use for Chaos Moon and to some extent for Sky Gods, where it's the visual novel aspect of it.
Okay.
Because one way to transport a story is, you have the graphic novel, you have the anime, but in the game, you also need to have story. And the best way to transport story easily in a game is through the visual novel aspect. You see that actually in a lot of games, that you will be fighting and all of a sudden there's like story elements pop up. There will be some dialogue, like an army general will talk to his soldiers, and then the fight continues. So you have like these story elements. You can do that technically with the software I'm using. And so basically that software can also be used for dating sims. So basically with the NFTs, you can go and you essentially can start dating the girls that you would like and gain tokens.
Oh, I think that's gonna catch. That's gonna catch really fast.
Hey, yeah, it's going to be really simplistic, but it's going to be to the point, and nobody's done. So that's why I'm going to say I'll call it the first crypto dating sim.
Yeah, right. You saw it here first, folks. First crypto dating simulator. Before we get out of here, I wanted to ask: now that you're creating this entire world, this new way of thinking, and I believe it's really going to catch up with people, especially the younger generation, because they know something is out there.
Of course,
they know there's something bigger than all of this that we see every day. But what's kind of like your 10 years from now down the line? What do you see all of this becoming?
Well, it's 10 years is a long time. In blockchain, that's like 10 lifetimes. No, more. I have to say that at the moment, things are running exceptionally fast. It is overwhelming. If I look at my own situation just 6 months ago, or even 4 months ago, basically, I mean, it is like running at a breakneck speed. And 10 years, I mean, I think the NFTs are definitely here to stay. Blockchain is obviously here to stay. Bitcoin will be worth several $1 million. I mean, I don't think there's really too much of any doubt there, because the blockchain technology, I mean, I think for the next 2 years, we'll see an extraordinary amount of FUD going on. We'll see regulation, we'll see ups and downs, we'll see like really crazy stuff going on, basically. But I think it will definitely be here to stay. And I think people like me that are comparatively early will have a good shot at really creating a new way of doing things. And for me personally, obviously the next step is going to be to make those metaverses in real time and really, like immersive, which is like one of the problems that I always had, like stuff like Second Life, or even now today, like looking at those metaverses like Sandbox and all that stuff to me. Do you remember that Dire Straits video, Money for Nothing from 1986 or 1987? He had like this early computer animation thing in there of this blocky guy that's interacting with stuff. And I hate
I
to say,
looked into it. I was born in '92,
I
so
know, I know, I know. Actually, it's funny. It was such a big hit. Maybe you saw it on MTV, the Backwards Machine or something. But my point basically being that the stuff still looks like that. The same way we still got grainy footage from Mars for whatever reason. It's like hello, and it's sort of like the thing that doesn't. My point is basically this: that I want people to give something that they truly recognize themselves and will be visually and story wise exceptional, and that's like my goal for the next 10 years.